Monaco. Final corner. 3 of his 4 brakes are dead. Charles Leclerc is running third at his home race, on streets he grew up on, when the car simply stops doing what he asks. The front left is the only brake working properly. The front right at maybe half. Both rears giving nothing, absolutely nothing, as if the calipers were never fitted to the car at all. He touches the barrier. Race over. And here is the part that will haunt Ferrari for weeks. His teammate had already solved this exact problem 3 races earlier. Lewis Hamilton finishes second that same afternoon. And the quiet change Hamilton made might explain why 2 drivers in identical cars have not actually been driving the same machine for quite some time. So how does one Ferrari end up on the podium while the other ends up in the wall on a weekend where, on paper, everything is equal? The answer does not begin with the crash. It begins with a decision Hamilton made back in the spring. A decision so small that almost nobody caught it at the time. Coming into Monaco, Ferrari has genuine reasons to feel confident. Monaco is the one place on the entire calendar where raw engine power matters the least. There are no long straights to expose a speed gap. What this track rewards instead is grip, confidence over the curbs, and a driver brave enough to put the car within centimeters of the barriers lap after lap. For a Ferrari team that knows it is down on engine power compared to Mercedes, Monte Carlo looks like the perfect place to hide that weakness. The early signs back that feeling up completely. The SF26 looks genuinely fast on Friday. Leclerc at his home race, on the streets he grew up on, looks at ease from the first lap. There is real hope building inside the garage that this could be one of the strongest weekends of the entire season. Then the weekend quietly starts to slip away from them. Up front, Kimi Antonelli is operating in a completely different class. The 19-year-old takes pole, leads every single lap, sets the fastest lap, and builds a Grand Prix that is never in doubt at the front. Before the late chaos, his lead is pushing 30 seconds. It is his 5th consecutive win and it makes him the youngest Monaco winner in history, breaking a record that had belonged to Hamilton himself since 2008. Behind Antonelli, the 2 Ferraris run second and third for long stretches. Hamilton in front, Leclerc behind. And it is inside that second Ferrari that something is quietly, dangerously going wrong. This is not a brand new problem. It first appeared in Canada, where Leclerc's braking never felt settled. But understand something. The issue is not really about stopping power in the obvious sense. It is about predictability. A racing driver brakes on feel, trusting that the car will respond the same way every single time the pedal goes down. At Monaco, where the walls sit centimeters from the racing line, that trust is not just important. It is everything. The moment a driver cannot predict what the car will do under braking, the lap time disappears, because a single moment of doubt is the one thing you absolutely cannot afford on these streets. Through the early part of the race, the problem stays manageable. The balance shifts unpredictably between front and rear. Every braking zone becomes a small guessing game. But as long as the race runs green, Leclerc can live with it. Not comfortable. Just bearable. Then Lance Stroll crashes at the final corner. The fast right-hander onto the start-finish straight, where the surface is already breaking apart. The safety car comes out. The field slows. And this is where Monaco's unique nature turns completely against Leclerc. Under a safety car, drivers fight desperately to keep heat in their brakes and tires. They weave, they accelerate and brake, they do everything physically possible to hold temperature. But Monaco gives them almost nothing to work with. No long straights, low average speeds, almost no opportunity to generate heat. That slow crawl behind the safety car is the precise moment everything collapses. 3 of his 4 brakes stop working. And they never come back. This is not a feeling or a driver's impression. It is right there in the data. The front left is the only brake functioning correctly. The front right at roughly half capacity. The 2 rear brakes showing virtually no stopping power whatsoever. Think about what that actually means. A Formula 1 car braking on essentially 1.5 brakes at the one circuit on Earth where there is zero margin for error. When the race goes back to green and the field accelerates toward that final corner, the car simply cannot do what Leclerc asks. He runs wide, touches the barrier, and his Monaco Grand Prix is finished. A red flag follows. In the minutes immediately after the crash, a clean and tidy narrative is ready and waiting. Stroll had crashed at that exact same spot. The surface was deteriorating. Loose rubber, a slippery patch, a driver caught out at a corner that had already claimed someone else. A perfectly packaged story. The real truth sitting inside the Ferrari garage tells a completely different version of events. The track surface explanation does not hold up. Leclerc had run through that same piece of tarmac repeatedly before the crash without any issue at all. The corner did not catch him out. The braking system did. And the way Leclerc describes it afterward is what makes it hit hardest. When you look like an idiot for a mistake that is genuinely yours, you accept it, he says. But this, in his own words, was borderline dangerous. That is not the language of a driver covering for an error. That is a driver placing the fault squarely on the car. Here is the detail that almost everyone missed entirely. While Leclerc has been wrestling with this problem all weekend long, Hamilton has not. Because 3 races earlier, Hamilton changed something. Around the Japanese Grand Prix, after running them in private testing, Hamilton switched his SF26 over to brake discs made by a French company called Carbone Industrie. If that name means nothing to you, that is entirely the point. This is not a component that fans ever discuss. Carbone Industrie's main business is actually aircraft parts. But in Formula One, they manufacture a carbon brake disc with a very particular character. It bites hard the instant it reaches temperature and it barely wears down, behaving consistently throughout an entire run. That choice seemed minor at the time. It absolutely was not. To understand why, you need to understand how brakes actually function on these cars. Every team runs one primary brake supplier, and for years the dominant name has been Brembo. But the carbon disc and pad material can differ from supplier to supplier, and that material determines entirely how the brake feels through the pedal. Brembo's discs are known for being smooth and progressive, building pressure in a steady and gradual way. Carbone Industrie discs are known for that immediate sharp initial bite the moment they reach operating temperature. 2 different philosophies. 2 completely different sensations at the pedal. Hamilton spent more than 10 years braking on Carbone Industrie discs throughout his time at Mercedes. His entire driving style, that late, fierce, hard commitment into braking zones, was built around them and shaped by them. So when he arrived at Ferrari and found a car configured around Brembo material, the brakes never quite spoke his language. Requesting the Carbone Industrie discs was Hamilton asking for the brakes he had trusted throughout his entire career. He received them around Japan, and by Canada the improvement was already measurable and real. Leclerc went in the opposite direction entirely. He had been on a full Brembo setup long before Hamilton ever arrived at Ferrari, and he chose to continue with it, pursuing the consistent feel he had spent years developing and understanding. So what comes next is the part that still does not quite sit comfortably, because here is the twist that changes everything. The alternative package, Hamilton's package, was available to Leclerc at Monaco. He could have switched. He chose not to. His thinking actually makes complete sense. Monaco rewards familiarity over everything else. Introducing an entirely new brake feel on the Thursday of the most precise, most unforgiving qualifying weekend on the calendar is an enormous gamble. The smallest change in pedal response can put you directly in a wall on these streets. So Leclerc stayed with what he knew, the package he understood, and bet he could manage the problem for one more weekend. The bet did not pay off. His assessment afterward is blunt and direct. Hamilton went in a different direction a few races ago with different brake material, and he will do exactly the same starting from the next race. The solution is already at the team. The answer exists, and Ferrari's senior technical people have examined the data and are in complete agreement. That single decision may turn out to be one of the most significant Ferrari moments of this entire season, because it reveals something the team had never openly acknowledged. For several races, their 2 drivers were not chasing the same solution. One moved first, the other has now decided to follow. But step back for a moment, because while the brake story has been unfolding inside Ferrari's garage, there is a larger and more uncomfortable picture developing. And it is the one that should genuinely concern Ferrari most. Look at Hamilton's recent form in full. At Monaco, he finished ahead of Leclerc once more and has now pulled clearly ahead in the championship standings. His second place equals Senna's record of 8 Monaco podiums, and he achieves it while serving a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, on a circuit where overtaking is essentially impossible and a penalty like that normally destroys your result entirely. He still comes home second. He is also completely honest about where Ferrari actually stands. After the race, he goes out of his way to praise the winner, describing the Mercedes as an amazing car. In the cool-down room, the man with 105 career victories looks at the teenager who has just taken his 5th consecutive win and admits with a genuine smile that the kid is catching him up. The performance gap is just as obvious in his honesty about raw pace. Ferrari simply cannot match Mercedes yet, and Hamilton is the first person to say so clearly. The gap was visible throughout the entire afternoon. Before the late safety cars, Antonelli's advantage was enormous. The Mercedes operated on a fundamentally different level. Hamilton was not fighting for the win. He was extracting absolutely everything from a car that is not the fastest on the grid. And that is the detail that matters most, because trust always precedes speed. When a driver makes a significant change to how the car feels, the speed does not arrive immediately. First comes understanding, then comes trust, then comes consistent lap time. Hamilton's run of results suggests this process has already begun. For Leclerc, Monaco showed the true cost of staying put. And it was not only the brakes. Even Ferrari's strategy seemed to show the tension building inside the team. When both cars pitted under the safety car, Ferrari double-stacked them. Hamilton first, serving his penalty. Leclerc queued directly behind. Stuck behind his own teammate, frustrated on the radio, concerned about losing track position. The actual problem was not strategy at all. Leclerc did not want to reduce speed too dramatically in the pit lane because race control had already warned drivers about precisely that. Ferrari stood by the double stack as the correct call to avoid being caught out by the safety car timing. But the story of Leclerc's entire weekend kept returning to the same fundamental issue. Not strategy, not team instructions, but a car that refused to behave the way he expected. Now, before this becomes a neat and completely closed case, there is another side to consider, and it is an important one. The picture looked complete the moment the brake failure was laid out in detail. It is not quite that simple. The company that manufactures those brakes sees the situation very differently. Brembo has pushed back publicly, stating it is too early to draw firm conclusions before the data has been fully and properly analyzed. And that is a fair point worth keeping in mind. The brake story is one version of what failed. It is detailed, it is coherent, and Ferrari's leadership are said to support it. But until the complete car data is examined thoroughly, the precise cause, whether it was the disc material itself, the cooling system, a caliper issue, or something in how the entire system behaved when cold, is not yet a settled and definitive answer. It is one explanation supported by data, challenged by the people who actually build the parts. There is one final layer to all of this, and it is the layer the brake story risks hiding by accident. Even if Ferrari fixes the braking situation completely, the team's most serious problem does not live in the brakes. It lives in the engine. Ferrari's 2026 power unit is down on the leading Mercedes engine by approximately 25 horsepower, and possibly considerably more. That is the gap Monaco quietly conceals, because Monaco asks almost nothing of an engine. Barcelona and the circuits that follow will ask a very great deal more. Some help is on its way though. The 2026 regulations include a catch-up provision for engine manufacturers who fall behind, known as ADO, additional development and upgrade opportunities. It provides manufacturers who are behind with more room to develop their engines, with greater allowances the further back they sit. Ferrari receives 2 such upgrade opportunities, more than the leading engine supplier is permitted. The pathway back exists. It simply requires time, and it changes nothing about this particular weekend. There is a twist inside the engine story too, because the regulations surrounding it just changed mid-season. From the 1st of June, a new method of measuring engine compression ratio came into force, adding a hot test to the existing cold measurement and quietly closing a loophole that Mercedes had been exploiting. The change was brought forward from later in the year, which means Monaco was the very first race held under the new rules. Mercedes still won, leading every single lap from pole position. Make of that precisely what you will. So place the entire picture together. Ferrari has a brake problem that divided its 2 drivers completely. An engine deficit that no brake disc can solve. And an internal teammate battle where the 7-time champion has quietly found his rhythm while his teammate ends up in the barrier. That is the position Ferrari carries into Barcelona. From the next race, both drivers will finally be working from the same starting point. Leclerc on Hamilton's brake specification. Both cars measured identically for the first time in over a month. That alone will not close the gap to Mercedes. The car still needs more downforce, more overall pace, and the engine remains behind. But fixing the brakes could transform everything about how Leclerc drives. Because when a driver finally trusts the car completely under braking, every corner entry changes, every qualifying lap changes, every strategic option opens back up. The real question is not whether the brakes failed at Monaco. The data says they did, and the only remaining argument concerns exactly why. The real question is the one Barcelona is about to answer directly. If Hamilton was on the right path all along and Leclerc spent 3 races on the wrong one, then how much of the gap between these two teammates was ever genuinely about talent, and how much of it was simply one quiet decision about a component that most fans have never heard of? We find out the moment they hit the track in Spain.